This is St. Louis Soaring's annual glider refresher and safety training, and I want you to remember that word. We're here to work on pilot safety. That's our goal. I'm the president of St. Louis Soaring this year. My name is Charlotte Taylor, and we are here now because we're getting ready for the 2022 glider flying season. We're very seasonal, and the second that field dries up, we'll be out there flying. We're really happy to be in the St. Louis University facilities. This has always been our favorite place to hold the event every year. We have a bunch of people to thank, and one of them is, I'd like to introduce Dr. Scott Duhlman, who's the Dean of Parks College, who's helping provide us these facilities. He's come all the way here at stupid o'clock to welcome us.
Thank you, I really appreciate it. The one thing that I think has really been apparent since I've joined Parks College is just how much of a family really the aviation and engineering units are. And that's why I know that you can tolerate me bringing mine today, because of course my wife was unavailable. But what really makes, to me, Parks College stand out is not only our history, but also our connections to industry, right? So we've had great pipelines to mechanical and aerospace engineering. Our research in biomedical engineering is top-notch. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, we're actually going through a reorganization at the moment. What is currently known as Parks College will soon be known either, and we don't know the final name yet, as the School of Science and Engineering, or the School of Science, Engineering, and Aviation. But what you traditionally know as Parks College of the Engineering, Aviation, and Technology is being joined by the sciences. It's being joined by chemistry, computer science, earth and atmospheric science, and physics. And so this will help us build up a more holistic education for our graduates. In particular, it's not enough just to be specialized in one area. You need to bring in a second area to be competitive in today's employment market. Now, this is going to be a fairly big change for the college. But that being said, our students are incredibly excited about the opportunities that this brings, because it is going to open up more coursework, particularly where they have driven interests, such as in computer science. But with that said, I know one of the things that's been controversial is the Parks name is not going to be on the main title of the college. But I do want you all to know that the Parks name, since many of you were on that Cahoot campus, is going to be on the Department of Aviation. And not only that, we are embracing the history. If you go into McDonnell Douglas Hall, as soon as you come in, you see the history of Parks College, all the way from its inception to where we currently are. That's not changing. We are extremely proud of being the first university that's offered a doctorate in aviation, and that's going to continue to be a touchstone for this university. So despite the changes, we're still going to be embracing the history and tradition, because that's just who we are as a university. With that being said, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Otherwise, I really hope you can all enjoy the program today. Questions, thoughts? All right, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Okay. I'd like to continue my welcomes. This is hosted by St. Louis Soaring, but we are very pleased to have people here from our sister club, Silver Creek Glider Club. I think you guys are all sitting over there. So this really is the glider pilots in the community. I hope everyone will get a chance to talk to each other. We also have here with us Randall Ottinger from the FAA, Safety and Training. Where is he?
Yeah, I am not going to be here all morning. I double booked another event some time ago, so if you see me leaving, it's not because I'm not interested. Just to tell you that, and suggest to you that what I'm doing at the, I'm a safety inspector for the St. Louis FISDO, but my primary job is to get out and glad hand people and be at events like this, and also to do the Master Pilot and Charles Taylor 50-year award. So in terms of trying to suggest that to you, if you feel like you're in that position and want that award, you can get in touch with me directly, and I'll try and work to develop the awards for you. And I know we've got a few people in here who were at one I did just a couple of weeks ago, and it's usually really a nice event depending on where you have it. So that's about it. I thank you for what you're doing, and I'll be around for a while, and I'll leave a few of my cards up here on the table for anybody that is in that position or wanting to speak to me about a special event or whatever. So thank you for allowing me to be here. Thank you.
All right. In relation to that, I also want to thank Mel. Where's Mel? Burkhart, over there, who has, with John Typen, also, I think, arranged fast credit for this. This will count as ground school for flight review according to our club procedures. If you're here, if you record it, if we have a record that you were here. Mel has very graciously put up spans and gotten this all online so everyone can register for it. Hopefully you did. And I want to thank him for that. And I want to make sure everyone, if you don't know what the FAST program is about for continuing training with the FAA, you can talk to him or some of the instructors here. So, I want to welcome everyone who's not one of our club members and glider pilots. Thanks for turning out. I think we have people from all over the place. I wanted to say Father Jim is here. He had the shortest commute of everyone. I just want to mention he walked across the street from the Jesuit house. So if you drove further, well, you know. Basically, I also want to thank and point out the people who did. I'm standing up here, but I did not do the heavy lifting on this. Jim Pavlison did a ton of work. He's the organizer. He deserves credit, and he's going to be running it when I finally get out of the way. Mike Whitehouse did the food. If you like the food, we can thank Mike for that. And all of the speakers got up in the morning and prepared their presentations, and you'll hear from them later. So I wanted to say a few words about what we do in this event for people who haven't been here before or people who have. I want to remind us this is all about safety. This is about being the best, safest person you can be as a pilot, as a student pilot, as ground crew. We're here to get our heads back in the game, to remember to be safe and then have fun flying. Because glider flying is different from most types of aviation. Glider flying requires a team. It requires a team to get you in the air at a minimum, which means you have to coordinate as pilot your activities with the ground launch and the tow pilots. Nobody, you can't get up by yourself unless you're Rick Hoffman with a motor glider. We're here to review the procedures because everyone needs to be on top of their game to fly safely for being the glider pilot, for being the ground launcher, and for being the tow pilot. It's a very quick, coordinated system, and the reason it works is because everyone in the U.S. follows the same procedures. The Soaring Society of America has safety procedures, they have launch procedures, they have flying procedures. Everyone studies it. We're here to review how to do it in the first half of today's program, and then in the second half of today's program, we're going to see what you can do with the glider. We're going to talk about flying considerations. For those of you who are new to flying gliders, these are awesome things. Just because they don't have an engine, their performance is amazing. Our guys go out and they fly hundreds of miles in a weekend with no engine. So if you want to know how it's done, we're going to do it. We started a little early because Dean had to leave. So we'll probably be able to make up time on the coffee breaks. Jim Pavlison is the person who did this and deserves credit. Do you want to? I'm sorry, I'm done.
All right, again, welcome everyone. The interesting thing about this season is that since we have not been flying, this is the first time we've pretty much seen each other since November. And it's great to see all the old faces and then some of the new. And we want to make sure that we are setting the stage correctly this season for making sure that we're not only doing it safe, we're doing it correctly. And as Charlotte says, as everybody, this is standardized, and we want to make sure that we're thinking about it that way. Now, do we need to?
If anybody wants to use it.
Okay. Can you hear me in the back? Are you okay? Okay. All right. So with that, there are some scene setters that we're going to start. This is not only to be educational, it's supposed to be interesting. To a certain extent, it's supposed to be interactive without getting bogged down. So with that, let me cover just a couple of admin notes, and then we'll get started. What you're going to see is and the pen did not survive, but the sign-up sheet is here, okay?
It's still alive. It's just
So somebody got a freebie for this, okay? So if you don't see your name on here, look at the back and just sign on the blank sheet, okay? All the information is there too. So just keep passing that around. The auditorium, this is just as in past years, nothing has changed. They're very particular about leaving all food and beverages out in the lobby area. So please don't bring anything in with you, and we just appreciate that. We just want to leave it better than we found it, and so that hopefully they'll invite us back, and we'll go from there. As we see what we're going to be out of here by noon today. There is going to be some side discussions, and yet we're getting started a little bit early. We're going to need every minute of this, okay? So as we do the break, if you hear my berating or loud voice or irritating voice after the break to get back in here, let's go ahead and get started so we can break on time or finish on time, okay? So with that, we have a number of presentations queued up. And this is more just of a scene setter that I saw the other day, and this is something that we kind of have at SLSA at some points, okay? This is just going to speak for itself. It's not a dire warning, it's not anything like that, but just think of conditions that you've had when you've flown. Obviously, this is not local. And the volume is not as important as the visual. Say again?
I'm on to the right.
Right, hillside of him, yeah?
Congested area, congested landing area is the key.
Left.
Yeah, hillside. That's it. Going up there. Close your brakes, close your brakes, close your brakes. Now close your brakes. That's it. Wake them in, wake them in.
This is the scary part. All right. So again, all's well that ends well. However, some instructions that were a little bit confusing, obviously. But the other thing is that what we have is congestion on the field. And I think that's not only for the flying ops, but for the ground ops. If we have a glider, if you're sitting there and watching things happen, you're not part of the solution. Part of the solution is to help get that glider out of the way so we can keep operations going. Common sense applies. Everybody knows this. That's no big deal. But for some reason, we need to translate that into action and to make sure, again, that we keep our gliders and we're clearing them the correct way. That perpendicular from the runway heading and then off to the side.
All right, that's it. It's very short and sweet, just more of a scene setter. You see what we have here. We've got our ROE for today, our agenda, and we're going to just go ahead and start off with Max and your brief on the fleet status.
Okay. Bring up the other page actually first.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'll get it. Yeah. Okay. So fleet status, this is the main page for our gliders when you log in. I'm sure you've all seen this page before. Thought I'd just go through these gliders real quick. And you can see, this is obviously the website that Randy's put together for us. And you can see the annual dates on them. You can't see any maintenance or ADs on this particular page. There is another page that actually shows that, but I don't think everybody has access to that. I'm not sure. Randy, where are you? No, okay. All right. I'm going to show you that real quick as well. So let's just talk about the gliders. First of all, the Grove 102 here, annual is good and it's flyable. It's got brand new seats and belts in it. Actually, that annual date needs to be changed, doesn't it? The annual is done. I haven't changed it on here. I did it in, when did we finish that, Charlotte? In March?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can see this isn't up to date.
You signed the book.
Yes, but I didn't update this page, so I need to do that. The Grove 102 Juliet 11, that's our new Aster CS, and it's just like 8 Yankee, same model, and it is available to fly now. Grove 103 is going to be due this month. K21 is not due till July. The 126 is considerably out of annual, but it can be signed off. 8 Yankee is due next month. Lima 9 is due right now. And that's our new Aster, the Club Aster, the one with the fancy instrument panel and the flight display in it. The K13 is not going to be up for a while. It's going to get recovered, so it's down for some time. Our favorite glider, our brand new K21 for the time being. Soon it's going to be known as the old K21 in case you haven't heard, because we're getting brand new K21 in May.
It's due in Baltimore in May.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, we got a brand new K21 coming in. It's going to be just like Papa Bravo, except it's going to have green wingtips instead of orange wingtips. Other than that, it's going to be identical. The plan is to move our old K21. We're going to be selling it, I hope. So basically, the old K21 is just getting a little long in the tooth, and we're going to replace it with a new one. The 134 has been sold, so it'll be removed from this page shortly. Now, I want to talk briefly about the 3 Grove 102s, which would be 8 Yankee, Juliet 11, and Lima 9. So this one, and this one. It's different than that one, the old Grove 102, because it's a tail dragger. How do I know it's a tail dragger? I go through this every year and everybody gets sick of it. But why do I know it's a tail dragger? The nose doesn't sit on the ground. Well, Pat, when I go out and grid the 103, see the 103 sitting here, the nose of it's not on the ground, its tail's on the ground. How do I know it's not a tail dragger?
Until somebody sits in it.
Very good. All right, I like that. So what does that mean? Why do I have to treat it different than the 103? Why do I have to fly it and particularly treat it differently on the ground than the 103?
On the ground, you want to keep the nose on the ground for steering.
Well, no. On the Grove 103, when you're landing, yes, you want to. It's going to go on its nose. But the main thing is you need a tail dolly. It's a tail dragger. It's got to have a tail dolly when you're moving around on the back of the golf cart. If nothing's going to get me my blood pressure up faster than seeing somebody pulling one of these gliders around on a golf cart with no tail dolly on it. I'm going to be excited because they do not have a swiveling tail wheel, and that is an excellent way to damage the tail. And tails are important. So the other gliders will be on the tail as well, but don't have nearly as much weight on them in the tail as the tail draggers do. So Juliet 11, 8 Yankee have tail posts They go in to the bottom of the fuselage, and Lima 9 has a boot. And most of you guys are familiar with these tail dollies because all the private prima donnas have them on their gliders, and they won't move their glider an inch without that tail dolly on. Take your cues from the private guys. That's a good thing to do. Well, some of their cues, not all of them. They always pull their gliders with tail dollies on. And when they're parked, they always have a canopy cover on them. And you know why? Because they take care of their shit. They do a better job of taking care of their shit than we do of taking care of our shit. So let's try to be more like them, only in the good ways. Don't pay attention to the bad ones. So that's basically the update on the fleet. I know that's probably a little confusing, but as far as the tow planes are concerned, 53 Zulu's good in annual right now. Through December, Foxtrot Alpha is close. I'm almost done with it. It was a big annual on Foxtrot Alpha. So those should be done and good to go the entire season, hopefully. Anybody that flies the 120, it's good. It doesn't show up on this page. How am I doing on time, Jim?
Good, fine.
All right. Let's talk briefly about, this is a super cool page that I have access to that Randy put together for me. It's awesome. So what I'm seeing right here is a report of all the annuals that are due, and this is tied to our tow sheet. Not that you will be involved in that, but when the 126 here goes out of annual, I get a notification that it's out of annual, and it is no longer, it automatically defaults to not being available. Isn't that right, Randy? He's not here anymore. How can he leave? Oh, there he is. Isn't that right? It defaults, or do I have to go in and change it?
It doesn't automatically
Okay.
down for maintenance, you would have to do that.
Okay, so I couldn't remember, but
It does for the annual, but that's the only.
okay. It's also keeping track of oil changes. It's also keeping track of our transponder checks, our ELT batteries, and my favorite, it keeps track of the ADs. Because we have recurring ADs on these gliders and these tow planes and the 120. So with regard to ADs, when they're recurring, how often do they recur? Does anybody know?
Depends.
Does it? What does it depend on?
What the AD says.
Okay. Depends on what the AD says. Are they normally like do them every 30 days or 24 months, or how do they work?
Calendar months,
Sometimes. Sometimes both. Sometimes it'll say every 100 hours or every 24 months, whichever occurs first. So ADs are really, they can make it however they want. They're so crazy. One of them on our Pawnee came out in 2007, and on 2007 you start the clock. When it acquires 1,000 hours after that date in 2007, then the AD is due. Totally indiscriminate. How they came up with that, I have no idea. But ADs are pretty finicky, but they're very serious and they're recurring. And if I do an annual on a glider and I sign off all the ADs, and there's a recurring one that comes up every 100 hours, and I don't sign it off, I don't get notified that that airplane's got 100 hours on it and that AD needs to be signed off, and you fly it, whose fault is it?
Pilots,
Right. So how do you know? How do you know if the AD's been complied with?
logbook,
That's the best way. There's also an AD sheet in the logbooks that I can show you if you're interested. You should be interested. If anybody flying any glider should be interested in where the AD sheets are, so that you can look at them and make sure that it is in compliance. I can only think of one person that actually does that in this club, and he's not here. So, no, he's not a DPE, but he does. He does. So, anyway, that's this program that Randy put together for us is incredible. It does awesome. So, that I'm not trying to blow smoke up his skirt or anything, but it's fantastic.
So the general membership have access to that page?
Sorry?
Do I have access to that page or just?
I guess not, but you know what? We've never really talked about that, Randy.
Yeah, we can make it.
Yeah.
And on edit access?
Absolutely. I don't know. Yeah, I think that would be fine.
So we can check the ADs?
And you could do it that way. The only thing is, I've got in here my get out of jail free card for references only, check logbook for compliance, in case, you know, and right here, this, calm down, calm down. What did I do wrong? I don't know, thanks for flaking out on me. But I had that one up there where the annual, I have done the annual, and I haven't updated the page in here, so it can't be the only thing, so putting that reference on there and checking logbooks is, I get it. I used to print something up and stick it on the refrigerator door, remember? So, anyway.
Used to write by hand.
Yes, yes. Did anybody have any questions about any of that mess? Yes.
If you're not current on the AD, does it affect the insurance coverage? Because technically the airplane is not airworthy and you're flying an unairworthy airplane and...
Sure could. Sure could. I'm not an insurance guy, but, well, the only experience I have with insurance companies is any way that they can get out writing a check, they'll take it. So, my guess would be yes, but we'd have to ask somebody else. Yes?
How about the other two?
The Super Cub? Yeah, it's not as close. Yeah. Well, I'm trying. I've just taken on another job and it's killing me. So anyhow, I can't believe I'm even here because I'm exhausted. So I hope so. I hope so. I want to talk about. Is there anybody else has any questions of any kind? Alan?
I just wanted to point out on the Road 102s, if you take off with the dolly wheel on the one, you'll know it. If you take off with the boot on, you'll really know it.
Yes. So what he's referring to is two of our gliders, that would be 8 Yankee and Juliet 11, have a tail post that goes up into a hole in the bottom of the fuselage. I'm sure the ones of you that have flown it know what I'm talking about. And if you forget to take it off, it'll fall off. It'll land on the runway. I mean, it won't go anywhere. You still want to take it off, but if you forget, you can continue your flight. Just tell somebody on the ground, hey, go pick up the tail dolly off the grass. Lima 9, it's a cuff, and you'll be flying around with a cuff on the airplane. Now, there are people in this room that have flown with cuffs on airplanes, and they will fly. No reason to bail out or anything like that. Just go ahead and come back and land normally and get it off of there. Try to avoid that, but don't. If you do take off with a tail dolly on the airplane, don't panic. You can fly it. Anything else? Cigarette?
To second, and having that available to all members, especially for teaching students. And
Sure.
prepping for a flight test, this is much easier to understand as far as all the things that are in the logbook that you need to look for.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if we're going to do that, Randy and I might be able to work on, well, I can probably do it, make it a little bit easier to understand for which gliders they apply to. 5 minutes? All right. No more questions. I got to go. People have asked me, a lot of people have asked me about this. You may have seen it in the Soaring magazine where Pawnee had the control stick separate from the torque tube. And people have asked me what on earth happened. And quite honestly, there's a lot of information out there that just can't be right. But the story is that pilot took off, well, it was his 6th tow of the day. If you read this business right here, it was his 6th tow of the day. He takes off, he makes a tow. He says when he comes back, there was play in the stick. He could move the stick 4 or 5 inches and get no aileron action. He thought that was peculiar. So he landed, and when he landed, he did it again, and he said, no, those ailerons are moving. That's only about 1 inch of play. Okay, I'll go ahead and take another guy. Let's go. So he hooks up to him. That was a bad idea. So he hooks up, away they go, and soon enough, the stick is off in his hand like this, which actually it couldn't have, because if you look right down here, you can see those cables are still connected to it. Those are going to control the pitch. So if he would have pulled the stick up like that, the elevator would have gone up and he'd have nosed way up. So evidently, this bolt came out that would go through that boss right there and through this yoke right here. Actually, the bolt is back in the yoke. It's right there. If you guys can see it. I don't know if you can see it when we're doing that or not. Yeah, okay. They claim the cotter pin broke and fell out. Cotter pins don't break. I'm not buying that. The cotter pins get forget to be put in. That happens. And evidently the nut came off and the bolt worked itself out. That's really hard for me to buy. But anyhow, if that bolt were to come out partially, it would make sense for this 4 inches of play, because right now that bolt is going through this yoke and it's catching a boss there and it's catching a boss there. Once it comes out to this point, now it's only catching this boss over here. So that stick could move without moving that torque tube. I'll buy that one. And then there was something in Rec Aviation Soaring that said, as a result, this was great, as a result of the crash with all the mayhem in the cockpit, the bolt went back in the hole. You like that? I sent him a text message and I said, the NTSB called. They said, don't quit your day job. So, I think the bolt must have come out. Anyway, the guy landed it using rudder flaps and trim. And he got it on the ground, but then he lost it on the rollout. And there you can see what happened. He didn't get hurt, so that's good. But the glaring takeaway here is, I mean, the one that's, because a lot of the facts are just, but the big one is, something didn't feel right. I had about 4 inches of play, but I decided to go ahead and make another toe. That's the big mistake right there. The other one was not putting the cotter pin in. Now this bolt is right between your feet. Your left foot goes right there, your right foot goes right there, and your butt goes right there. So if something's going on, that is a clearly visible bolt to see very well. I got to look down and you'll see it. So that's my take on that accident. There's something more at play there, but what I wanted to get across is if you're flying the tow plane or the glider and something doesn't seem right, get it on the ground and let me know or let Sean know or somebody, or just send me an email or something. Don't just fly it again, because this could have been really bad. How am I doing on time?
About 1 minute.
All right, does anybody have any questions about this Pawnee thing? Anybody have any ideas about where I'm all wet and they're right? No? Okay. Anybody have any questions about anything with regards to maintenance? Except the snide comment about the Super Cup.
Well, Max, surely one point is anybody can ground an aircraft. If you think something's wrong with it, get a pizza stick of the
Pringles can?
Pringles can of doom, stick it on the stick and find somebody so that nobody else takes off in it.
Yeah, I'd say that's a fair statement. Usually, though, people come to me,
Oh, yeah,
because I'm there quite often.
Well,
Charlotte?
if you do that, write a note, post it somewhere, use the
Yeah,
whiteboard.
put a note on the
I don't know
whiteboard.
what you guys do at Silver Creek, but I'm sure you have a place to post when there's an aircraft problem. Because one of the things we have is no one is all there at the same time all the time. People come one day a week, so write a note.
One thing to add, not to start soapboxing or anything, but we have had several instances in the past. In our community, they call it get home itis, right? That's a big deal in power pilot stuff. And here we have in the club, we have a get it done itis. And the dirty side of the teamwork thing is you want to go give that guy a tow, you want to bring him home, you want to X, Y, and Z, you want to do all that. But the same psychological phenomenon, it has caused probably most of the really scary instances I have seen in this club.
Yep. Didn't you also want to bring up something about people need to watch gliders more?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about that for the next 20, 30 minutes.
Actually, there will be time.
That was actually a joke. Okay, maintenance is done. Next.
There we go. Let's see. Good. Okay, I'm Rich Livingston. I do the field ops scheduling. I've been asked to talk about field ops procedures. And the 5 key messages of this little talk are: please show up. Sometimes people are assigned a field ops manager duty and they don't show up. That's not good. Keep it safe, that's your number one priority. Keep the operation moving, because we want to get everybody to fly. And delegate, because it's a big job, and you can't do it by yourself. And finally, for everybody, whether you're field ops manager or not, find something to do, because this is a volunteer organization, and nothing happens unless people volunteer. So on the topic of showing up, last year in particular, too many people failed to show up, particularly on mornings. And this is particularly a problem for the instructors and the students, because now they have to spend time getting gliders ready, towing gliders back and forth on the field, doing all that launch ops manager duty stuff, when they could be flying and instructing. If you can't make your assignment, that happens. Try to trade with somebody else. Look on the schedule, find somebody that's in the next couple of weeks or month, and see if you can trade with somebody. You can send an email to the entire club. Contact somebody at an assigned time that you can make. See if they'll trade with you. As a last resort, at least let me know that you can't make it and you can't find anybody. And I'll try to twist somebody's hands or arms, or maybe come out myself to take your place. I'm going to take names this year. I haven't done that in the past. We've tried to be friendly, but I think it's been enough of a problem. I'm going to try to take names. So particularly the instructors, if somebody doesn't show up in the mornings, contact me, let me know. And we'll see if we can improve this situation.
Rich, just a thought on that.
Yes.
Can we clarify the time that the morning shift needs to turn up and the time that the afternoon shift starts?
Well, you know, let's discuss that a little bit, because I can see an issue there. You know, if the weather doesn't look good, you know, is there any point in showing up? You know, if it's going to be raining, should we make somebody show up? How do we make that decision? I'm throwing that out to the group. What do people suggest that we do? Should we call somebody like Max or Kirk that lives nearby?
Or just look at the weather forecast and look at cameras?
I think it's a good idea to contact your tow pilot and consult with them on that, see if you can reach a decision. And if there are going to be instructors involved.
Well, we got that email blast, we just
I
throw
would
it out.
argue
Is
that's
anybody
bad.
ever flying?
The tow box can fly in worse conditions than the glider, so the tow box shows up if the gliders want to show up. So if the instructor and the student want to fly, then if it's a question, then the tow box might ask them.
Pat?
So, and it depends on, I guess we have varying levels of experience with the field ops guy, but we have a sign-up sheet online for the instructional gliders. And if somebody's scheduled, they're probably scheduled with an instructor, you might contact that instructor and see if they are intending to come out that morning. I mean, there are times when it's just absolutely obvious nobody's going to fly.
Yeah.
You know, just
Yeah, if there's thunderstorms and it's raining.
you know, just because you can't. But it's really easy. We've gone to a fair amount of work, St. Clair, putting that sign-up sheet for the glider on, go look at that, see who's on it, make a call.
Yeah. And last resort, call me. My name's on the list, and I'll try to figure it out. Jerry?
Yeah, even if it's raining, there are things that can be done out of the club, so if something comes out there,
That's a
we'll
good.
find something for them to do.
Yeah, that's a good point, and that ties in with something else I have there, that if it's at all marginal, like Jerry says, there are things that can be done. We don't clean our gliders nearly as often as we ought to. You know, the hanger can be swept out a little more often.
I think the challenge is this. So I'm 20 minutes from the airfield. So if the weather clears up, so if it's marginal and now it's flyable, I can be there in 20 minutes. Some of the folks that are coming from the other side of St. Louis, the instructor could be there with their student, it could be flyable conditions, and yet. So from my perspective, unless it's clearly a no-fly day, I'm going to be there, and for the morning shift, I'm going to look to be there for 8:30, so that it's ready for 9 o'clock for the instructors. is that we can have the hangar doors up and get things basically pushed out, and then these guys can start flying at home.
And I think that's a good point. I think 8:30 is a good time for the morning field ops person to show up so that we can try to get the first flight 9-ish. Does that make sense to everybody?
Rich, I just, since I basically I'm there on Saturdays.
Yeah.
And so I'm doing coordination, just trying to figure out what students are coming out when, and we do have the sign-up sheet for the weekend. So I'll activate that, coordinate who's flying when as far as students, populate that, and I've been hit or miss as far as getting to the tow pilot sign-up sheet and the flight ops to basically find out who's on for that morning and put them on the weekend sheet. And what I can do is actually just add the tow pilot and the flight ops persons to that email that I do coordinating with the students as far as, okay, you've got 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, to let the tow pilot and the flight ops person know when we're going to be out there. Because personally, I don't get out there, the first thing I schedule is 10 o'clock. It just takes me an hour to get out there. I'm not going to get up that early on Saturday. So that'll just help coordination. That hopefully will tell me if for some reason that tow pilot and flight ops person isn't going to be there or has switched with somebody or what have you.
Now, by the way, already Randy's program automatically sends an email a week in advance to the next weekend's field ops managers. So they're being reminded by email already. But good, that would help. Pete?
Yeah, Rich, I'll go back sort of to Nick's original question about what time people show up. And what you said isn't entirely consistent with the way we updated the handbook, but that's okay. It's not the bylaws. We can change it to whatever we decide. But just to be clear, you know, it has always, at least in my opinion, been a little bit clunky what's been in the handbook and, you know, why that overlap and that kind of thing. And so we made a couple of changes in the handbook to both the times, and we also created a new third shift, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, the overlap shift.
Right, and so what's in there currently right now is that the morning person is there 9 to 1, but may start as early as 8 if somebody confirms beforehand that they want to fly earlier. The afternoon times is 1 to 5 or whenever flight ops ends. And then the new thing that we're doing this year is that there's an overlapping peak dispatcher, so that during those peak hours in the middle of the day, we've got actually 2 people assigned to duty, so you don't have the one person sort of running around trying to find help. And so that peak dispatcher goes from 11 to 3, so everybody is like on a 4-hour shift. So that is going to create a situation where, you know, in past years, if maybe you had 3 or 4 duties a summer, because we're creating that third shift, you may have some additional shifts. I think the intention, at least the intention from the board, was for that middle shift person to sort of be, you know, coming off of the list of the newer club members, the lesser experience and that kind of thing, because it gives them the opportunity to sort of serve under the guidance of the more experienced dispatcher.
Yeah. Yeah, we did that for the first time last year. Frankly, it wasn't clear to me how well that was working.
That's a whole other discussion.
Yeah, I think we need to have another discussion at the field maybe.
Yeah, but since we decided to do that in the middle of the season, the schedule was never, it was sort of a separate schedule, right?
Right,
The
it
schedule
was.
was never integrated with that, and I think if we're able to create the full schedule of the 3 people, then I think it may be a little bit clearer.
Well, let's talk about that and try to work out how to make that work better. Yeah.
In the past, you had a calendar out there where we could mark down the weekends we weren't available. Are you going to have that this year?
Yeah, I was going to mention that. If you have any conflicts, dates that you cannot do it, let me know. In the next week or so, I'm going to be doing the field ops schedule for the year. So if you let me know what dates you prefer, what dates you cannot do it, I'll do my best to accommodate you. And There was at least one person last year who indicated that he could only come out on Sundays because he lived far away, things like that. Whatever your constraints are, I'll do my best to accommodate you. But get that into me soon because I'm going to be doing the schedule shortly. And if things change during the year, again, let me know. If you can arrange a swap with somebody, let me know and I'll incorporate it on the schedule so that those automatic emails go out.
Rich?
Yes, Mel?
A point with being made about the morning flights and the evening flights, but, if you're scheduled to fly at 8 or 9, you can't show up at 10 minutes to 9 and expect to fly because the hangar doors may not be open. Somebody's got to open it, and you can't depend upon the co-pilot to open the hangar doors and get your airplane out and those kinds of things. So I would implore everybody to think about getting there in sufficient time to prepare their airplane for flight. And the same thing is true at the end of the day. If you fly one of the last flights, you can't just bug out because Jerry and Max get tired of putting the airplanes away all the time and closing up the hangar doors. So, as individuals, I think you need to give that some thought. To come early, prepare for your flight, prepare the airplane, because it may not be out there on the flight line waiting for you. You may have to get it out of the hangar and so on. So anyway, I think personnel reporting for duty is important, but I think we ought to give some thought to preparation for flight. And then it's get there in time to prepare the airplane, the hangar, and whatever the case might be.
Okay, and we'll talk about that a little bit further also. Rick?
Yeah, my comment was just I like the mornings myself, and we can open the hangar doors, but we're not going to move airplanes by ourselves. So
Right.
we're going to need tow pilot shows up. Maybe get the tow.
And the tow pilot has to pre-flight the airplane before flying.
Three guys there. So you really want to wait. You really want to wait for.
There needs to be at least somebody else there to get things moving.
So yeah, to your point, get there early and be prepared.
Okay, so moving on to the top priority for field ops is to keep it safe. That's our number one priority, and it's the primary job of the field ops manager, but also of everybody at the field. Check and watch the weather. A couple of years ago, we had a scare with thunderstorms. We talked about that extensively last year at this seminar. One app that I find useful is My Radar. It shows a live radar screen. You can see where the storms are as they're approaching, see what direction they're going. You can also talk to the tow pilot. He gets a great view of the storms when he's towing people and can give you a more experienced idea of whether it's time to pull everybody in, stop the operation, put the gliders away or not. Keep uninvolved people off the field. I think we're fairly good on this, but every now and then people not involved in flying, preparing their gliders, start collecting on the field. If that happens, as launch ops manager, it's your job, your responsibility to say, everybody that's not involved in preparing an airplane for flight, please get off the field. We don't need people that are not paying attention to the flight operations wandering around the field. That's a formula for a disaster. Particularly people that are not members of the club, that are not pilots. They don't necessarily recognize the hazard like kids. Keep the cart radios on. All the golf carts have radios. That's a great way to get help, from the other end of the field, to ask somebody to do things. If a cart radio doesn't work, let me know. That's one of my jobs, is to try to keep those radios working. But being able to communicate around the field is part of the job. There's also a radio on in the clubhouse now that you can hear both inside the clubhouse and in the deck. So again, that keeps everybody aware of what's going on the field. And finally, enforce the takeoff safety zone. This is something we really implemented last year. We had a talk here about a serious incident at Seminole a year ago where a glider took off sort of diagonally. We don't have a pointer here, do we?
No, we don't have
Is this? Yeah. So some gliders, particularly ones with a CG tow hook, can get into a situation where they take off diagonally, and that's really bad. So what we want to do is enforce this safety zone to the side, and actually should extend that direction as well. Gliders can go either way. What we did last year is we started setting out an orange cone at this spot right here. It's basically in line with the south side of the hangar, and it's far enough out that you have room to park gliders here, you have room to tow gliders through here, and then here is the line that you set up gliders for launch. And everything within this zone, and I particularly pay attention over here because this is almost always clear. But over here there should not be cars parked, there should not be airplanes parked. We want that area to be clear. And the idea is that from that cone, you should be able to look at the northeast corner of the clubhouse and not see anything further north from there, up until the road. That should be a very simple thing for us to do. So we're going to try to do that again this year, is mark that spot and keep a cone there. And the idea is that we set up the first glider in line there. Maybe we can launch the next glider behind it from wherever it is. But if you have gliders like, if this is the next one to launch, pull it up to the line to launch from that spot. This is just to keep things extra safe. Sometimes the people in the two-seat gliders, they're heavier on a hot day with a little bit of tailwind. They may want extra room. Sometimes they're not comfortable starting from here. They want to start from further back. If so, go back in this direction so you still have that same zone clear. Okay. Also, our field isn't really marked. It's sort of a secret, but we try to have 4 zones, stripes down the field. Now, on the right is the power runway. It's sort of marked. If you're on the ground and you look real close, you can see those marks there. Last year from the air, I couldn't see those. Then to the left of that, to the west of that is a landing zone. And then to the left of that is the takeoff zone. And then way at the west end of the field is where we want to taxi. So when you land the glider, as soon as the golf cart gets there, try to pull it over to the taxi zone, bring it up that way. Don't bring it back up through the takeoff lane. Don't bring it back through the landing lane, because we want to keep that lane clear. And this is, well, we'll bring that up in a moment. So the second priority is to keep the operation moving, because everybody wants to fly. The more efficiently we operate, more people can fly. So get the next glider up. If the gliders, you have a glider ready to take off, get the next pilot to get his glider in position, so that when the tow plane arrives, after launching a glider, there's a glider ready. He's done his pre-flight. He's got his passengers in. Passenger's gotten all his flight briefing, and they're ready to hook up and go. Don't hold up the operation for the pilot at the top of the list. They have priority, but if they're not there ready to go, then you can let the next person go. When I'm field ops, whoever is standing around ready to go, he's the one that's going to go next. If there are 2 people standing around ready to go, the person higher on the list goes. I don't care who's at the top of the list. If they're ready to go, they're going next. Be sure to record all launches on the iPad, the pilot's name and the glider, the tow pilot name and the airplane. Don't worry too much about altitude released. This is one of the things Randy told me when I first did field ops. He's going to charge 3,000 feet unless something else is entered there. If you get released at 1,000 feet, it's in your interest to make sure that when you land that 1,000 feet was entered on your tow. Otherwise, you're going to be charged for 3,000 feet. From my point of view, that's not a big deal as a launch ops manager, whether you're towed an extra 2,000 feet or not. It's your concern. And finally, record the landing times. This goes back into what Max was just talking about. They record the hours. The hours are automatically computed based on these iPad records. So when things need to be done in 100 hours, that's how Max knows about it. So that's why it's important to record the launch time and the landing time.
Also, if I might add, Rich, at the end of the day, we need to get tack times off of the tow lines. Yeah, that needs to be entered in the iPad.
Okay, good. Launch ops managing the airfield is a big job. And as a couple of people have already pointed out, really one person cannot do it. This is a volunteer organization. Nothing happens unless some people volunteer to do things. As launch ops manager, you can tell people to do things. Tell somebody to launch a glider. You don't need to do it yourself. You can tell somebody else to launch the glider. You can sit in the golf cart under the wing and record the takeoff. Ask somebody standing around to retrieve the glider. Ask somebody standing around to pull out a glider to get it ready, pull it out of the hangar. Turn on the clubhouse radio so that you can communicate with people in the clubhouse rather than having to walk over there or ride the cart over there. Ask somebody who's just standing around not doing anything to clean a glider or to move a glider. Delegate. And really this is for everyone. Because again, launch ops manager is just one person. The field operates because everybody helps out. So volunteer to launch a glider, retrieve a glider. If you see a glider landing, get a golf cart and go out and pick it up. Pull out a glider and get it ready to launch, especially early in the morning. Make sure the battery is installed. Clean a glider. I guess I covered that again. Keep covers on gliders. This is Max's big thing. We don't want to cook the gliders. They're a lot more comfortable. If you've ever gotten in a glider that's been sitting in the sun and you pick up the seat belt and you burn your hand, you know how hot it can get inside a glider in the sun. So keep the gliders covered, except when you're doing the final pre-flight, getting them ready to launch. Another thing Max wants to remind us of is don't let all the golf carts end up at the north end of the field. The field is, 2,500 feet long. It's a long walk. So try to keep at least one golf cart back at the clubhouse. And if you bring that last golf cart to the north end of the field, you or ask somebody else to take another cart back to replace it fairly soon. Put batteries on charge at the end of the day. Every now and then we come in the morning and we find there's a battery in the glider. This is Sunday morning. Somebody just flew Saturday, but they put it away without the battery on charge. So that battery is not going to last a full day. So at the end of the day, remember to recharge the batteries. And finally, if something doesn't work right, tell somebody. We'll try to fix it. But this is all everybody's responsibility, whether you're field ops manager or not. I guess that's it. Let's see, there's one other thing that I was reminded of from a comment earlier today. Launching a glider. There's a wing runners course. Everybody should have done the wing runners course. And if you haven't, go to the SSA website. It covers the basic duties of what to watch for, what the signals are, what your responsibilities as the wing runner are. So I would ask everybody to do that so that we're all following the same procedures. Okay. Any questions, comments?
Yeah, I want this with the So they just do a minimal energy landing, just as short as they can, and sit there waiting for somebody to come out and get in and clear the runway. So I've had so many different occasions over the years where I've had to land over a tow plane with a glider attached, or land over two guys out there in the field. And if instructors just teach these low energy landings, they're going to find themselves just like we did at the seniors this year. We had a hell of a headwind. Nobody was staying in the air. We had 5 or 6 other gliders in the air, and everybody's landing over the grid. And I mean, by clearing by 5 feet, if that doesn't scare the shit out of you sitting in your canopy watching a glider go right over the top of you, several of us just pulled off the grid out of we didn't want to be there. So I can understand it with students landing straight ahead, solo students landing straight ahead. But if you're a pilot that is a private glider pilot, you ought to have the ability to control the airplane clear to the right towards the power, or clear to the left towards the taxiway, and open that field up for anybody else, because we don't have a go-around button. So, I mean, that's something that operations ought to consider.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've been in that situation where there were several gliders scattered around the field, and I had to figure out a way to land without hitting any of them. Yeah. Charlotte.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify a couple of policy things since we're all here together. We're not doing paid rides again this year, so no walk-up rides. I think you guys are in Silver Creek maybe, but we're not doing it at St. Louis Soaring. But we are able to tow gliders who are not club members. That's been problematic before. If somebody comes in, if one of you guys lands, if someone from Indiana lands, we can tow you. There are procedures for it. If you're with an SSA club, no problem, but we also can tow people, I think, who are not. There are procedures in the handbook for doing that have been added this year. So don't just tell someone that they can't be towed. Yeah.
One quick thing to add on to what Richard said is that, yeah, it's crowded. You want to clear your glider as much as you can because you want to clear the runway. Where it gets a little bit tricky, but it's common sense airmanship. If you were the guy right behind that guy, like your multiple gliders landing at the same time, you have to either be able to stop before the glider in front of you, in case he turns in front of you, or if you think he's going to land and have enough runway, land over him. You don't want to be in the situation where you land alongside him or right behind him, and then he turns in front of you and you T-bone him. So when you're landing in a bunch of guys landing at the same time, you have to plan on either doing a really short landing and stopping immediately, and I mean really short so the guy behind you can go over you and get enough room in front of you, or be able to carry it to the far end of the runway, or pick other parts. But we have a huge airfield, and all of it is landable in any just about direction. Strong wind, you can use 27 or 09. I've done it before. So don't think you have to land on the runway. That field is a runway. That's all I got.
Okay. Anything else?
I'd like to add, you kind of hit on this a little bit, but I wanted to stress it, was when we're towing, the time for the glider who's next up to get in and put his parachute on, strap in, is when the tow plane is on downwind, not when he idles up. Because I see that a lot. I see it, a lot of people, it's kind of become like the watering hole, or whatever you want to call it, at the cockpit of the glider that's next up. There are 3 or 4 people standing around chewing the fat, and here comes the tow plane, he's landing, and when he turns, Walker comes up to grab the rope, that's his cue to get the glider. That's wrong. His cue to get the glider was when I came on and I said I'm turning downwind. Now start getting in, because that way you pull up and hook up and go.
And to be able to do that, they have to have completed their pre-flight and talk to the
Absolutely.
passenger about how the controls work.
Well,
prior
I
to
see it
that.
with private guys. So not just getting riders,
Right.
I see it with private guys that they realize, oh, I should be getting in my glider because the tow plane's sitting there idling.
Yeah.
You should have already been there.
Yeah. Okay.
Rich, if you can stay there for a moment.
Nan's got a question.
Yeah. Ann?
Yeah.
It's more of a comment than a question. At Seminole this year, they talked about the accident that was last year.
Right.
And the wing runner
and they actually need to run. It's not a this, it's a that.
Can you do that one more time? Yeah.
No, I'm exhausted.
Do that again. Yeah. Who else has a question or comment? This is meat and potatoes. Alan?
Since we're instructing, we're taking pilots off, if they're practicing the rope break, do they notify the full-time pilot, or do they notify the instructor?
Yeah. It's normally the tow pilot, as Jerry says. All right.
Can you show the symbol for that? We have a signal for rope break to the tow pilot. Do you want to show it?
Oh, really?
You go like this. When you're getting ready to launch, the instructor will go like this, and that means we're gonna have to practice rope break. Don't tell the student.
That being said, as a tow pilot, I really don't care.
Yeah.
The fact that you break a rope or disappear on the tail just makes it a short flight for me. Otherwise, I really don't care. That's
I'm the same way, yeah, absolutely.
So you get out my tail with that.
I don't know.
Yeah, but the ground ups people, sometimes it's useful
It's
to
ground up.
know. And that is the signal.
All right. So all the presentations so far, and especially what Rich did, Rich got the clues. We said, okay, what are you going to talk about, and how are you going to talk about this? And it's that you are the key to safe and effective operations, okay? And what Rich has laid out are not only what the policies are, but how you can be a part of this. Again, as a club, not as a business, you are that person. You are that person to make things happen. Now, you may do it slightly differently than somebody else does, but it has that left and right boundary is fairly tight, okay? Signals are signals. They're standardized, okay? Common sense may have you may have a mud hole that's right here, and maybe, okay, so you're going to move 5 feet over, okay? That's where common sense comes in. That's where your judgment comes in. And as a new person, and you say, somebody ought to do something about that, or I don't like that, you are that person. You see a lot of corporate memory in here. You see a lot of, again, people that have done this time and time again, and yet we adapt pretty well, and yet if we are not either teaching, or if you as a new person are not learning, that's where we are have our greatest vulnerability. So I think, as Rich is bringing this out, and if anything, everything on every bullet on his slide should be registering with each and every one of us. How are we going to address this? How are we going to fix it? How am I going to be part of that solution here and now? Okay? All right. Now, Rich, do you have anything else? No. Okay, that's outstanding. In the same vein, again, this is, we're going to carry that theme forward with Kirk's brief from the tow pilot brief.
What do we think, Rich?
Thank you.
That was me.
I'm Kirk Stan. I'm kind of the chief tow pilot for St. Louis Soaring, so I'm going to talk about some tow plane issues. And let me get rid of this file here. However, I'm going to actually change things up a bit because of what the discussion's been going so far. Let's see. Get this going here. Okay, started. No. Get this big. This is called not pre-filing your computer before you do it. There you go. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to talk about tow pilot operations. However, and I was going to do it in this sequence, but I'm actually going to do it slightly different. There's a CG hook aero tow action part I want to talk about because it ties into what's been discussed so far. I
have the report. It's in French, so I won't put it up because you guys will try to read French. And if you want it translated, I can provide it to you. But let me go back to the slide that covers it, because I'll go over it in a nutshell. And the situation was an ASW-20 taken off an airfield in France in April of 2014, I believe, being towed behind a pipe of Pawnee, 55 just like ours. The winds were down the runway at about 18 to 25 knots. So a pretty strong windy day. Experienced pilot, about 1,000 hours total PIC time, I think 600 hours in gliders. He had some recent glider time, but hadn't flown that glider in about 9 months. But he had time in that glider at this club. He flew it every year when we go to this glider camp. The launch starts off with the wing runner, does a normal wing run. There's video of it. There's actually a film clip that shows it on the action report. The wing runner runs for 3 seconds. Lets go of the wing, the glider's level. At 5 seconds, the wing starts dropping, you can see it. At 7 seconds, at 5 seconds, the wing drops and actually hits the ground. It's the left wing. At 7 seconds, the glider starts ground looping into a cartwheel to the left. At 8 seconds, because of the rotation, the angle of attack and the wing on the right wing, the glider lifts off. At 9 seconds, it's cartwheel inverted. At 10 seconds, it hits the ground and kills the pilot. Experienced pilot, good glider, Pawnee, aero tow launch on a normal day, not really that other than the pretty strong winds. CG hook, of course. This is a type of accident that is potential in a winch launch environment, and winch launch pilots who are trained get this beaten into them. That if a wing drops on launch, you release immediately. On a winch launch, you have your hand on the release, and if your wing touches the ground, you release. It's no question, it is an automatic action, there's no thinking involved. Wing drops, you release. Aero tow pilots are taught, well, keep your hand near the release, and if you start, if you think you might have to release because you're starting to ground loop, pull the release and then recover. That's what killed this guy. He didn't release in time. Now, the cause of the accident was a wing drop. It could have been caused by a gust. It could have been caused by the prop wash, because about the time it happens is about where you hit the wake from the tow plane, which will tend to drop the left wing a bit. If you've ever noticed it, your left wing always kind of has a bit of a kick. At about that point, when you get to where the prop wash is for the tow plane. Could have been the guy didn't have his straps tight. He slid back in the cockpit and got away from the release. You couldn't grab it. Could be a lot of things. But the bottom line is, the wing dropped, he didn't release, and the dynamics of that launch killed him in 10 seconds. If you want to know more about this accident, get a hold of me. I'm more than happy to show you the action report and translate from the French, because it goes into some interesting details. It also goes into how they do glider clubs there, which would be a shock to how we run glider clubs in America. But anyway, that's it. So bottom line is, I think that if you have a CG hook, and I know, 7 gliders in our club have CG hooks, about that. If you're launching and the wing drops, just pull the release and take another launch. It is not worth it, because it will kill you if everything is wrong. Okay, so that's the fun stuff. Let's go back to, okay. So, as far as the co-pilot things, I was going to talk about co-pilot currency real quick. Things you have to think about. Let's see. Of course, your flight physical. You have to have a current flight physical. That should be no brainer, however, And, for us, class 2, class 3, it's okay, because we're private pilots, but talk to your favorite flight surgeon. Flight review. We all know that we have to get that every 2 years, right? So make sure that's been accomplished. It can be in a glider if you're a glider pilot and a tow pilot. It's probably, if you can do it in a power plane, it's probably better, but then again, since we're flying gliders and flying gliders, I'd say there's some benefit to doing the flight review from the other end of the string in a glider. Aero tow currency. This is one that has a potential for catching people. Per the FAR, you need those 3 actual or simulated tows in the preceding 24 months. And that's 3 of those.
while accompanied by a qualified current tow pilot. So the tows can be similar. That means that unless you do the next part B, even though you're flying tows all the time, you have to get into a two-seater with another tow pilot who is current and qualified, and then you fly 3 practice tows, or real tows if you happen to do it in a two-seat tow plane with a glider, and go through those tows. That is what is required. If you are a glider pilot, you can do 3 aero tow launches as PIC in a glider in the preceding 24 months. So like in my case, I fly my glider, I always get those three aero tow launches as PSC, because single seat glider, of course. So I keep current by that way of doing it. I don't need to do dummy tows or practice tows for that other pilot. But for any tow pilots who either haven't flown the glider in a while or are only tow pilots, then the recourse in our club is obviously jump in the 120 with another qualified and current tow pilot who is current, and to demonstrate 3 practice tows. And the objective here, of course, is to go through the procedures, talk about it, get your mind back in, make sure you know all the signals and everything else, and do the tows. Any questions about that? It's pretty straightforward, but it has some little gotchas if you're not paying attention to it. No questions, good. That's the kind of crowd I like. Next thing is do some homework before you start towing this year. And the Soaring Safety Foundation website has a lot of good stuff. I'm going to be sending out links to all these documents after the meeting here later on today or this weekend, so you can make it easy for you. But basically, go through the tow pilot course again. It's a good refresher on how to do it. Do the wing runner course, because it's a good idea to make sure what those guys are supposed to be doing, so you can tell that young kid or the old folk, whatever's back there screwing up the wing running part, what he did wrong there. Screws up a launch. Go through the standard American soaring signals. It's a good refresher what all the signals are back there. One that always gets people is the signal for the glider having its die brakes out after takeoff. Now, I'm not going to bother asking you guys, because you all know it's the tow plane waggles the rudder, and that's the signal to the glider to retract his die brakes. However, one caution on that, I repeat this every year, is if you take off and they've left their die brakes out and you still got a good climb rate going, i.e. you're still climbing, don't waggle your rudder, because I guarantee that idiot at the other end of the string is going to release the glider and land out or scare himself. So just drag him up to 1,000 feet over the field, waggle the rudder, and watch him think that you're giving the rock off, and he'll pull the release and he'll land. Hopefully he'll recognize the die brakes out. That has happened several times in the gliding community. So just a word of warning, don't waggle the rudder below 1,000 feet, because you're just going to cause ugly things to happen back there. Now, the better solution is get on the radio and tell them, hey, put your boards in. That usually works too. And there are also some good flight training videos of various incidents and things to do that are on that website. Take a moment or two to look at those and get a refresher on that. Any questions from our co-pilots on any of those issues? Anything I got wrong? Anything you disagree with? Comments? Okay. What about from the non-tow pilots? Anything you want to ask about or questions about for the tow pilot community?
I have a tow pilot comment, and maybe it's just me. If you're going to call me on the radio and tell me something, it's really noisy when we're climbing, so speak clearly and fairly loudly, don't mumble, please.
And also, that's a common frequency for other unicoms. So it's not necessarily a phone line, or it's not a phone line by any stretch of the imagination. So quick, concise, official, necessary.
And just as a preparation for the future, when you're talking to a tow plane, it really helps if you know the call sign of the tow plane. Failing that, yellow Pawnee or beige Pawnee, it's kind of hard now with our colors. But because you'll be eventually in your flying career, you'll get a situation where there may be 5 tow planes towing 5 other gliders, and if you say, tow plane, give me 5 more knots, everybody's going to get 5 more knots, and they may not need 5 more knots. So it's good to be able to identify the specific airplane part. And that's proper radio courtesies to identify who you're making your comment to. Go ahead.
Yeah, be sure to know the correct tow speed for the glider that you're towing,
tow pilots, we normally tow, well, the glass ships is a pretty good tow, about 80 to 85 miles an hour, works good for about everything. However, if you're towing, there are gliders that need a much slower tow speed. If we do get the 126 back in the air, then you're down to 1 notch of flaps and towing at 65 to 70 miles an hour. Go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, the other thing is if you're gonna box the lake or have a pattern tow, tell the tow pilot right then, because as a tow pilot, we will alter our pattern a little bit if you're doing a 1,000-foot tow or box the lake. Because when I like to box the lake, I like to keep the plane pretty close to the field and not just fly far away. So if the rope breaks during the box, then you can get back to the field. So it makes a difference on how we fly, how the tow pilot flies, especially for a pattern tow. So I would tell them, when you're hooking up for a run.
Go ahead.
Just one other thing, and that is for the tow pilot. If you've got a crosswind, don't try and just go 360 degrees, crabbed over. Drift with the wind, so you give that guy behind you plenty of room to make a reverse turn if he has a rope break or anything else.
Of course, now there's an article in Soaring magazine that says do it the other way, which is absolutely idiotic in my opinion, but that's okay. Different opinions are good. Yeah. We have radios on almost all our aircraft. If you don't have a handheld by now and you're serious about flying gliders, you should have one. So there should always be comms with the tow plane. Use the radio. If there's anything you don't like, use the radio. The excuse of the tow plane took me away from where I wanted to go is no, you let the tow plane drive you where you didn't want to go. You are in charge of where that tow plane goes by either telling him, hey, take me to that nice cloud over at 1 o'clock, or, if you don't have a radio, just dragging them over by moving your airplane around. So I don't want, that excuse just doesn't float it. Make sure you tell the tow pilot what you want. What Rich brought up about the box and wake is great. I mean, we try to plan our patterns to give you the best tow to meet your needs, whether it's enough room to do a box to wake on a nice straight line, whether it's taking you to the queue that's got the other gliders in it so you can catch up with your buddies and go cross country. Whatever it is, you're going to get the tow if you talk and coordinate with the tow pilot. And don't take 3,000-foot tows. 2,000 is plenty, by the way. Okay, that's enough for the tow pilot stuff. I've already talked about the crash. I got a bonus video I'm going to show here, and we'll go over these points afterwards. Let me get this thing called up here.
Hey, that's a cool picture. How'd you get that?
I don't know. Somebody was flying alongside me and scared me. See how scared I am? I'm pulling away.
Explain what you're seeing there, though.
You go ahead. You go ahead.
See the wing, his opposite wing is a reflection of the glider wing in the fore.
That's a clean glider.
Yes.
This thing right
It's a little out of focus, so I'll see what I can do. Brodsky.
Okay, let me go back to this.
A non-towered airport. Now when I say student, I teach mechanical bull riding to people with vertigo at the local pub. I don't want to talk about that right now. I want to talk to you about my preferred method of entering a traffic pattern at a non-towered airport. So if you're a pilot, you know there's 5 approved ways to enter a traffic pattern. Today we're going to talk about 6 of those. The first and dumbest method is the overhead brake. This is a maneuver that's only permitted for former fighter pilots who are trying to relive their glory days in a 180 horsepower RV that they built in their driveway. The overhead brake is a maneuver where between 1 and 35 RVs, all in a flock, overfly the runway at red line. They put on a little air show as they bake up towards the traffic pattern, briefly join the downwind leg like a normal pilot, and then immediately switch to a power off 180. All right, RV pilots, don't get your feelings hurt. I'm only kidding. I actually have done some overhead brakes with my friend Sid. He has a YouTube channel called Because I Fly. You should check it out. The very first one we did, it was kind of abrupt and scared me a little bit, but it's quite a bit of fun. I can see why you guys do it. But I will say this. When I was a student pilot coming back from my long cross country, I was turning base at my airport, and an RV calls and says he's going to do an overhead brake for 1.7. Never heard the term before, didn't know what he was going to do, didn't know where to look, and so stupidly I was really quiet on the radio. I was like, I don't know how to respond to that. And the dude just cut me off, blasted right past me as I was on base, and he was going through final, their version of final. Scared me to death. But I can see why you guys do it. It's a lot of fun, but there's no doubt it's the aviation version of jaywalking. The next entry I want to talk about is the teardrop pattern entry. Now, the teardrop pattern entry isn't a real pattern entry. It's actually just a made-up name for when you've gotten completely lost and flown past the airport and realize it's behind you, so you've got to turn around and go back. Pilots don't like looking foolish, so if you make a mistake, give it a name. Now it's a maneuver. In order to fly a proper teardrop entry, the first thing you want to do is angle your plane perpendicular to the runway opposite side the downwind leg from which you want to land the plane. We're going to overfly the field, and once you're over the top of the field, this is when you want to start thinking about slowing down. Landing gear, flaps, and all of your pre-landing checklists should be done here. Next, you're going to want to do a steep bank away from the airport, and this may seem counterintuitive, but we're actually going to do a 360-degree turn here where we'll finish in the downwind leg for the airport we're landing at. Once the turn is complete and we're parallel with the runway, we're going to level off. And once we're level and everything's good, this is when we're going to make a turn back to the runway and we're going to reduce our power. At this point, it's very similar to coming in from a base leg. Everything's going to be normal. Fly your approach and your final as you normally would. Start to slow down as you get near the runway and make sure you're on a stabilized approach. And now you just land as you normally would. Fully in control, fully stabilized. Once you're down, hit the brakes. And if you happen to have a house with a hangar in it, you can just put your plane right in the hangar. Or if you don't want to do that, maybe you put it out back if you've got a special spot where you keep it. You've got a lot of options is what I'm saying here. All right, the next pattern entry I want to talk about is one of the more common ones, and that is where you overfly mid-field, slightly above pattern altitude, and then you turn and join the downwind leg and finish the pattern and land normally. This is really common. I used to do this a lot. So I'm going to give you a better solution than this one. Rather than coming into the airport and overflying the field 500 feet above pattern altitude and descending into the downwind leg, my preference is to come into the airport 500 feet below pattern altitude and ascend into the downwind leg. That way, if there's a midair or some other problem with you and another airplane, who's got the right of way? The lower plane. That's right, that's you. As long as you're below pattern altitude, the airport's all yours. The next pattern entry that I want to talk to you about is one you're probably most familiar with, and that's the 45-degree pattern entry. This is probably the most common pattern entry if you're not a Cirrus pilot. Most instructors are teaching this method, but I'll tell you a secret, nobody's doing it. Let's go to my airport and I'll show you what I mean. All right, I'm at the airport, and I got my protractor. Let's see who's entering on the 45. Nope, 32. He's 15 degrees off. 55 degrees? Nope. 80? Not even close. So as you can see, nobody's entering on a 45 degree for the downwind. Everybody's coming in at all different angles. It's all confusing, and people are going to smash into each other. So a friend of mine named Ryan suggested that instead of entering on the 45 degree angle, you actually enter on the negative 45 degree angle and fly the pattern backwards. Why? That way you can see what you're going to hit. If traffic's coming at you, you never have to worry about someone sneaking up from behind you and hitting you. They're always going to hit you from this way, and you're going to see it coming. You're going to be prepared for the collision. The last pattern entry I want to talk about is called the Cirrus pattern entry. This is when you call inbound as a Cirrus. People are going to get out of the way because they don't know if you're coming straight in from 10 miles out or if you're just going to come down in the middle of the field. It's 2022. By now people have figured out when they hear Cirrus, the best maneuver is just to get away for about 5 minutes and let you do your thing. So now the airport is all yours. You're going to land with no issues. The funny thing is you're not in a Cirrus. You're in your Piper, your Cessna, whatever. Now you're going to go to the FBO and just joke with the other guys about these crazy wacko Cirrus pilots and be like, he never showed up. He probably was at the wrong airport. These crazy Cirrus pilots. They're really good airplanes. All right, stick around for some outtakes, but thank you guys for supporting me. Thanks for sharing.
Okay. There's actually a purpose for this. Let's go back to my slides here. Let's see, wrong one. We can just look at this. The reason I brought this up was HO7 Highland is it's an uncontrolled airfield. It's public use, people can come in and use it, but it's not, we don't have a tower. It is a bit of an unusual airfield because due to our glider operations, we have non-standard traffic patterns for power planes when we're launching to the north. Because this little grass strip, a lot of people seem to fly around and not even realize it's there. You get people buzzing through the pattern without even knowing there's an airfield there at low altitude. Right next to a highway, so all the IFR traffic is going right over our departure in from 36 at low altitude, and people fall on the road. So it's kind of it's not a very structured environment for an airport, if I could put it that way. So what I want to cover here is real quick is when you're flying around H-07, expect anything. People come from any direction. Any kind of airplane, anything from great big turbine helicopters to gliders to, we haven't had a hot air balloon yet. Well, no, we had ultralights and parachutes and everything. So be aware of what's going on out there. If you have a radio, listen to it. Most guys have radios. Traffic might make a radio call. I stress might make a radio call. And if you hear a call that you don't understand, that crazy guy doing overhead approaches or calling 1 mile initial for the overhead, and you don't know what it is, ask him, where are you? And I'm here, and what are you doing? So use the radio and talk to the guy. You don't have to be, maverick to talk on the radio like a Navy guy, but you can just talk on the radio like a normal person and communicate. There's a good advisory circular, and I'll send it out to everybody, called 90-66B that talks about non-towered airport flight operations. It's about 18 pages. It ad nauseum goes into every possible detail of how to operate an airplane at a non-towered airfield. I'll send it out, take a look at it, you might learn something. I did when I looked at it, and it's a pretty good piece of writing by the FAA. Also, the FAR and the AM has some good stuff on traffic patterns. It's worth knowing. As a pilot, you're supposed to know that stuff. By the way, overhead patterns are approved. They are described in the AIM. But now, of course, the bottom line is, gliders, we have the right of way, but it's kind of like a sailboat and a super tanker. Yeah, you have right of way, but sometimes it's better not to fight about it. And airplanes have big propellers in front that can hurt you, and pilots who don't look out the windows and they're pretty much blind. So keep that in mind when flying a pattern that's mixing traffic with various different kinds of aircraft. Okay, yeah, that's all I got. I'll open it to the floor. What do you got?
I got a dumb question. I should go look it up. Do we still have 2 frequencies? Because for a while the field was 122.8 and our operations were 122.9. I think in the last couple of years we've had people come in on 122.8 because it was posted somewhere, maybe in old chart.
And we got a chart on their ForeFlight on their iPad. Look it up, see what it says.
Because for a while people were,
I think I just closed your...
when they gave us the operational frequency, people were still using the old charts. Should I take that?
It's 122.9.
Okay, so just be aware of that.
A lot of people just don't know to look that we're even there and don't look at the chart. And but for us, we're on 122.9, and of course, if you're going to get away from the field, basically out of the pattern, you fly cross country, we like to go to 123.3, sometimes 123.5, but 123.3 is really busy during the week. But bottom line, if you are in the area, turn the radio on, turn it up so you can hear it and listen to what's going on. Even if you don't talk on the radio, just listening to what's going on will give you some more situational awareness to what's happening on the airfield.
You might want to mention Silver Creek's radio frequency.
And they're on 123.3.
Yeah.
So if you fly up there towards there, again, that's another good reason for us to switch to 123.3 if you're flying away from the local area. Thing to think about there is if they have a lot of traffic going on, like they're having a busy day, keep our interplane chatter down so we don't step on their chatter. That just occurs. And maybe go to 123.5. That's all I got. Anything else?
So what Kirk and both Kirk and Rich talked about, and Rich Heyman talked about, is the purpose of the tow plane is to get you, the glider, you're the customer, downright, okay? So we're not only looking for what your preferences are, but what the feedback is, okay? I tend to land a lot, and I said, as I land, I come up and say, how was that? Or something better I can do. Please, unfiltered is fine, as long as the information's being passed. And we do that. We learn from that. I've learned a lot from all the other tow pilots. And again, as Rich had said earlier too, we amend things based on what you tell us. And if we have time to respond to that or have the ability to respond to that, we will. There are some cases though, when things don't go as planned. Then you're just along for the ride as long as you're on the other end of the tow, on the other end of the string. Because we may have to avoid obviously weather. We may not see the life flight helicopter coming in. We're looking for that traffic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You're part of that clearing traffic also. All right, any other comments, last things? Okay. Yes, sir.
Everybody knows it, but if the tow pilot drops the lead, please release immediately. Don't spend 5 seconds wondering what's going on, and you start catching up with the tow plane and getting information. Towing glider is not meant to be informational flight.
Spoken from experience, because you may not see that power loss. And Bob's had that, and it worked, but that's not.
Pilot release.
Release first, then ask questions.
Right.
Because the tow pilot's not rocking you off unless we got problems.
Great. All right, very good. So we're at a break time right now. We're just right on time. We're perfect. We're shooting for 10:15 to start back up again. Just listen for the chimes or my voice, whichever comes first. Thanks.
Thanks, Kurt.
It's kind of a pickup game, so to speak, a couple of seasons ago. Last year got a little bit more steam, and what Rick is doing, or has done, is formalize this in a way that is incredible. It's not just flying around the flagpole. You'll see what all this difference is. This is the serious stuff. This is the next level, so to speak. There's stick and rudder skills, and then there's what Rick and Steve are going to be briefing here. They put a lot of planning in not only what the presentation is, but what the plan is to execute this for this season. So, Rick.
Thanks. I don't know what happened. My voice has started crackling. So projecting it might be a little bit of an issue.
Well, Rick, can you use the mic now? Use the mic up.
It's more technical than I'm prepared to deal with.
That's what happens when you reach puberty.
Yeah, exactly. Like what Pam said, is we started a proving grounds program, and I can't take credit for it. It was actually something that a Canadian club, QNIM, put together. And the idea of the program. Does that help at all?
Yeah.
Okay. The idea of the program was to help with retention. If you've taken a look at the new SSA magazine that you've got, you see a little article under that Dave Hart wrote as the editor, talking about the SSA. Currently, we've got about 9,000 members out there. Of those 9,000 members, since the last 20 years, we lose about 2% every year. So you can see one of the biggest things is retaining members. The focus years ago has been on youth membership and getting youth training going. The problem is, they start flying and all of a sudden life gets in the way, college, families, and oftentimes they only revisit the sport when they're older. So the SSA and the Soaring Safety Foundation are focusing on transition pilots that are wanting to pick up another rating, glide rating. They're looking at airline pilots. They've both got the financial ability and a schedule that allows them to focus more on soaring. So with the proving grounds, it's kind of looking at trying to get people engaged in the transition from gliding to soaring. Gliding is, and I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. You can go out and bore holes in the air all day long and have a great time and come back. But the challenge of going 200 miles, 300 miles cross country with no engine is something that when you land, you're going to smile. There's no question about that. The objective, just like I said, is developing cross-country pilots and primarily focused on getting retention. Kind of helping people address that, okay, now I've got the rating, what's next? What do I do? personal, if I wouldn't have started flying cross country, I'd probably be on another hobby to a company that's 17 that I've got going already. So one of the things that the SSF, Soaring Safety Foundation, is looking at is a new program where they're looking at instructors. And how many instructors currently fly cross country? Jerry was a great example. Flew cross country. He's one of the guys that kind of got me into flying cross country. And now 89 Charlie is a hangar queen. Sorry, Jerry, that's what it is. It just doesn't move because he's busy with primary students. So the whole idea behind trying to get CFIGs involved in cross-country and cross-country skills is to help with that transition from primary instruction to actually soaring, developing some real skills. Let's see. Oh, yeah, one of the things that I wanted to talk about was participating in the SSA, ABC, and Bronze badge program. In Europe, they really do things a lot differently. There are a lot of Eastern European clubs that part of your primary instruction is getting your silver C. If you don't have your silver C, you don't get your pilot rating. So, yeah.
Before you get off of that slide, I'd like to encourage everyone to participate in that ABC and Bronze program. I am an SSA instructor, and I have the authority to issue the ABC and Bronze badge. So for all of you who do not possess them, if you'll bring your logbook and let me know, I'll give you the badge, or I'll issue the badge to you. And for those who don't meet the qualifications, I'll help or encourage you to satisfy the requirement for the ABC and Bronze badge, and you can then log it in your logbook. So let me know. I have the badges, and I have the paperwork that's required. I'd be happy to do it for you.
Yeah, when I started, that's exactly what I did. I got my A, my B, my C, sat down with Mel. He issued the Bronze badge test for me. The only bad thing about that is the FAA requires only 70% pass, and the SSA requires 80% on that Bronze badge. So you might have to study just a little bit more. Yeah.
And then would be worth thinking about adding people's badge status on our roster so we can show who's got badges and who hasn't.
Better yet, how about their name tags?
I'll work on that. I'll work on that.
Yeah, I think that would be great. I think it would be great to have identification on guys that were either instructors or what they're, they've gotten their ticket as opposed to a solo guy.
Peer pressure is a wonderful thing, so just,
Yeah.
I think we keep
The Proving Grounds we put 3 tasks together. And these tasks, first thing that we did was I got with Kirk and we revised the term point database that we have for the SLSA site. I threw a couple of points in there. The one thing that I probably should have done is gotten with the Silver Creek guys and asked them about any particular points that they might have wanted to add around the area as well, but I overlooked that. These Proving Ground tasks are kind of built on each other. So the terrain is familiar, the waypoints are familiar. They consist of 3 tasks. One was called a racetrack task. It's only 34 miles long. It keeps you in a glide distance of Highland or Silver Creek or Schaefer at all times. Unbelievably, it was only flown 1 or 2 times last year, and I probably was the only guy that flew it. I don't understand that. We had a lot of people that were flying the longer tasks, the Soaring Run. But we do have the Vandalia Sprint, which is 64 miles long, the Silver Run, which is 104 miles long. And it has 2 legs that both qualify for your silver badge. There are several of these by the whiteboards that are in the training room, several task sheets like this that identify the cylinder size, start altitudes, the size of the turn points, minimum finishing altitudes, that type of thing. And like Kirk found out last year, if you don't comply with each part, you get a zero score. The way we do this is you take the IGC file off of your flight. You can get an IGC file from the UDI or from the LX 8050 that's installed in one of the Groves. So we've got 2 ships that are primary for flying this task, as well as the portable UDI that can be pulled out of one of the Groves and put in one of the 2-place ships, so you can fly with the instructor as well. But these tasks I thought were flown pretty well last year. This is just a little bit of an enlargement of the particular task. The waypoint number is identifiable in the database as well as the names. A couple of things that really help support a proving grounds program. I was pretty happy because we got about 18 people that showed interest and signed up for just the communications that I provide, as well as information on taking these IGC files, sending them to an auto scoring website, and you get a score back, and that score is handicapped based on the glider's performance that you're flying. A couple of things really help to support these programs. One is a club and a board that encourages cross-country soaring. And again, from a standpoint of how to retain more members, how to keep people's interest going, I think we now have a board that's fully engaged in adopting this program as part of our regular activities. I think the club has demonstrated that through the addition of some good single-place gliders that are equipped for it. I think Kirk's got another UDI that's another portable that can be hardwired into something. I think one of the biggest things that we, and the SSA and the SSF, they've introduced a new SSA category of instructor. It's called a cross-country instructor. To be a cross-country instructor, you have certain criteria that you have to be able to meet. You can either have flown in contests, or you have some minimum long-distance cross-country flights that you may have done. You have a Silver C at least, or you've done a 300K flight, something of that nature. So the SSA is pushing both that. They're pushing subject matter experts, which I don't have a CFIG yet. I'm working on one, but I do qualify as a subject matter expert to work with current instructors to get them back into cross-country flying, understanding some of the nuances, especially with some of the new gliding equipment that's out there, hardware. Let's see, we've got the availability of the sailplanes, we've got the program, we got the navigation computers set up, the LX and the OD2 and the ClearNav. We've got the turn point verification for the badge flights. We've got the data loggers that are available. Some of the things that I'd like to concentrate this year are on some short sessions in the morning before flying, where people that are intending to fly some cross-country or intending to fly one of the proving grounds tasks, we get to the airport a little early, we sit down, we talk about weather for the day, what's going on, the tasks that might be flown, how those tasks could be flown. Instead of, we're set up some lead follow. I've got an ASG 32MI now, which is a 50, what is it? It's 51 to 1, I think is the glide ratio on that. Two-seater. So I'm anxious to do some mentoring with that glider. I'm also anxious to do just some introductions to cross country. I flew with 3, I think, pilots last year, and each one of them walked away from flight with a smile on their face. Jim would be a good guy to talk to. We did 400K in an afternoon in a 2-seat glider, and he had an opportunity to fly a little bit. I had an opportunity to talk to him about maybe some of the things that he could potentially work on to improve his soaring skills, and I'd like to do more of that this year. Specifically towards mentoring. And we've got several other pilots here that are either previous contest pilots or just good experienced cross-country pilot instructors like Jerry. And I'd like to see if we could really get into some mentoring activities with pilots this year. One of the things that I've done is I've taken a look at it. It's a 2002 program that the SSF started, and it was a cross-country trainee syllabus. And this syllabus talks about weather, accuracy landings, off-field landings, the different topics below in that bulleted list. And and that's where they're coming up with the cross-country instructor, glider instructor. And so if Jerry, if you wanted to get into it, or if you wanted to be certified by the SSA as a cross-country instructor, I think the minimum is 2 years of instruction, 50 hours of instruction, and the biggest thing would be like a 300K flight in your logbook. That would qualify you. These are the objectives of the CFIG, cross-country CFIG and advanced students. Looking at everything from the handbook. I can get copies of that handbook. I can put it out at the club where I can talk to people individually about that. Particularly off-field landings. If you take a look at why people are hesitant to leave the airport traffic area and cut that umbilical cord, it's basically the fear of landing out. You've got a sight picture that you had for your primary training that is Highland. You know what tree to turn over to start your base. You get so regimented in this is our field, this is what we do, that oftentimes you might not take into consideration I've got a stiffening headwind for landing, so I might need to modify my pattern. You really need to be able to develop that it looks about right instead of checking your altimeter and saying, okay, it's 600 feet, I need to be turning base leg now. So one of the things that we'd really like to do this year is focus on getting people experienced with an out landing. There's a couple of ways we could do that. We're in Illinois, for God's sake. We could just close your eyes and head straight into the wind and you'll find a field to land in. Or we've got Silver Creek, which is 9 miles away, that is a new site picture for you. It's a great place to get your first actual out landing. So fly up to Silver Creek, you fly with an instructor, you fly with a mentor, or if you're signed off on cross-country operations, do it yourself. Either we can come up and give you a tow, or I'm sure Silver Creek would be happy for the extra revenue as well. Last year's Proving Grounds results were, number one, the biggest thing was we adopted the program. I think that was a great first start. We've updated the turn point files. We're in the process of right now trying to get Linebacker to get the Soaring, Soaring Turd Points, or what the hell is the name of it?
It's a worldwide Soaring Turd Point Exchange.
Yeah, yeah.
This should be posted pretty soon.
So you can download it, depending on what format your flight computer uses, you can download formats that your flight computer will ingest. Like I said, we had 18 members that were signed up. We had 2 silver badges that were achieved last year. Matt got his silver badge, silver altitude, silver distance, and silver gold duration. And Steve got his silver badge, silver altitude, and silver distance. He's going to work on his 5-hour make your ass numb portion of that badge this year, I'm sure. And another thing that I'm real tickled about is Dave Blankenship purchasing his own private glider. So I think these introductions into cross country is, I think number one, it's going to help retain people. It's going to give people a goal to shoot for. You know, every flight you should have, you should be trying to improve something. A spot landing, better tows, and of course working on your thermaling skills. But the Proving Grounds program offers you those kind of opportunities. These are the winning results of last year. Again, I was the only one that flew the racetrack and turned in. You can see while I fly a JS1C, I have a raw speed of 73.4 miles an hour, but the handicap for that glider is 60.9 miles per hour. Whereas Max, flying his Speed Aster, had a raw speed of 45.2 miles an hour, and the handicap speed was 45.2. So he gets full strength reporting on that. So Max walked away with the Vandalia Sprint, and Max walked away with the Silver Run. So we had some pretty good notables in there. Randy Tealking flew a good flight for the Silver Run. Steve did, obviously, and Rich Livingston had a good flight as well as experiencing his first real land out in an unimproved hayfield, which there's an article we wrote that we distributed for the Proving Grounds people. I think we might have distributed that to the rest of the membership as well, I guess not. But the SSA magazine had a good article in last month's issue that Rich put together that covered that. And again, I think that was a really good article. It emphasized, I think, one of the biggest things is establishing a hard deck for yourself. And at that, I was at the seniors this year, had my first land out at the seniors, and when I hit 1,000 feet, 120-foot elevation down there, my finger was on the trigger. I was over an airport. I started the engine, flew back. But the engine didn't start. I had an airport right below me to land in. But the big thing is you shift from soaring to land, and you make that commitment. And I think that was an observation that Rich made in his article, which was a really good one. Talk a little bit about the ADC badge programs. I'm going to let Steve talk about these a little bit. He can go through my slides, and then we've got, there's only 3 or 4 of these, but then there's a bunch of slides behind that are kind of screen grabs off of the SSA website, and I hope that we have these presentations maybe posted to our website or someplace so people can look at them, refer to them, and go from there. Any questions at all about anything before I turn this thing over? Jerry? Or
I would like to see Odie installed in the front seat of every 2-place glider so that we could incorporate the flight computer with primary training.
Yeah. No,
because you're going to have to use a glider
there are three areas of improvement. One would be a farm in every ship, as well as tow planes, particularly. The second would be, what is it, the OGN network, where we have the ability to take a look at all farm and transponder-equipped ADS-B gliders in our area. We can see them. Go ahead.
In case you don't know what he's talking about, FLARM is basically a device you can put in gliders, came out of Switzerland. It is a cooperative air-to-air data link between gliders and any of the aircraft that's equipped with it. They use it in helicopters and other planes anywhere. But basically, it gives glider, it sends out glider position, so you can send any other glider farm equipped within a few miles. It also gives you active collision avoidance. The glider gets to the point where he's a threat, it gives you a warning to avoid that threat. If you put FLARM and all the gliders and the tow planes, basically everybody knows where everybody is when they get within a few miles of each other. And the OGN you just mentioned is a system with a ground receiver and some other receivers scattered around that lets the club watch all the gliders that are FLARM equipped and tow planes in real time in the clubhouse.
Yeah, so you know if the guy's not back, where's his symbol? Is he flying? Is he moving? As far as the computer and just about everything, and especially the two places, that's wonderful. If you've got the correct polar in, if you have input from your electronic vario, being able to see what you can reach, how far you can go under the past conditions that you've had maybe in the last 20 minutes is it's a tremendous feeling of safety. I can remember when I first started flying cross country, if Litchfield was our first waypoint, I'd get to Litchfield behind Jerry and Max, and pretty soon, where are Jerry and Max? They're gone. You guys did a shitty job of lead and follow. But anyway, I'm looking at my altitude. I'm looking at, I had ClearNav installed in my 27 at that time, so I knew what I could reach, but still I kept edging more and more and more towards either Silver Creek or Highland. So having a flight computer on board and a good information getting to that flight computer is a real feeling of safety. So I think by working on helping instructors understand how they can integrate primary instruction into the next phase of flying, which is cross-country flying, having equipment that supports cross-country, having lead follow, and the thing about lead follow is you should do the leading, I should do the following, because I can't see squat from out in front of you. But from behind you, I can help you with course selection. I can help you with thermaling skills. If you get stuck down low, I should be prepared to pull the boards, come down to your altitude, and help you find that thermal and get back up to safe soaring altitudes. So, yeah, all those things I think are things that I'd like to see us work into this year. Any other questions before I hand it over? My email address is on the website. My cell phone address or cell phone number is on there. On a Saturday, Sunday, if any of you guys have the inkling to want to experience cross-country soaring, let me know. I mean, that's one of the primary reasons I spent a ton of money to buy a two-seat glider, is to try and entice some of you guys into cross-country flying.
You might mention that we also support cross-country flying on a available basis on non-normal flying days.
That's exactly
during the week, if it's going to be an awesome day, nowadays with the forecasting tools we have, you can predict pretty well a few days ahead of time. We have the capability of providing tow pilots and getting people together and doing call the blue flu and show up at the airport ready to launch at 11. That's usually how you get your best cross country.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is a safety meeting. One of the safest things a pilot can do is maintain inerrancy. And if you stop and look at your logbooks over the years, a lot of guys have a tough time logging 20 hours in a year. And you have to ask yourself, does 20 hours make you a safe pilot? Probably not. So take the opportunity and fly as much as you can, as often as you can. Cross-country soaring is a great way to get lots and lots and lots of experience. I fly between 200 and 300 hours of glider flying every year. That's the only way you're going to get better.
One way to be a safe pilot is in that 20 hours if you do 80 touch and goes or landings. So you just take off and land a lot. And you're not that good. So what I was going to do, how much time do we have? I assume we don't have much, right?
About
15 minutes. Okay, that's actually more than I thought. So I did some screenshots, and I'll cover over what those are. One of the original thoughts was, what did I learn this year when I started doing some of the cross-country stuff, so I can maybe touch on that first, then I'll flip through these. But by trying to get involved, getting on the emails, one of the lessons learned is I really should be retired, because when they start sending emails that, hey, we're going to fly on Tuesday or Thursday, I'm like, I can't make that, because you never know when the good days are. Another thing is, not for a lack of trying, I tried the sprint a couple times, and then one of my landings was, as I was on the second leg, up near Silver Creek. I just couldn't get away from Silver Creek, and I ended up having to land up there. So I didn't make the whole thing, but I think I still learned an enormous amount, because trying to find out where those points are, trying to make the right decisions, and then really don't go away if you're not confident and it's just, there's cycles during the day. You gotta practice when those really crappy points are, and try to survive until the weather gets a little bit better again. And it tends to be cyclical, and I just happened to be at the wrong time. I landed at Silver Creek. The great thing was, got a tow 10 minutes later, back airborne, and it's basically kind of nice, and I do think maybe going up to Silver Creek and landing up there is a great idea, just as a plan. Now you know where it is, you know that you can land at a place if you've never landed at another airport, and now you're like, okay, well I can do that. And my other landing out this summer was over at Greenville. And so I know where Greenville is. You find the prison, you can see the airport. I was using the Audi, and I can talk about that in a second as well. But the lesson learned, and the greatest thing about safety briefings and what we all should do is always share things that, okay, here's my lesson learned. Here's the thing that I probably could have done better. Like pattern direction over at Greenville. I was going to land on the grass. What's the best? Is it a left turn, right turn, frequency? I knew the frequency, that's easy. Then I really had to prep for what turn direction was. I knew where the power pattern was. And then there's also a big ass tree right on short final on the grass runway. So I kind of felt like, well, I'm adjusting my pattern for this tree. I know there's a runway there, but in a way I kind of felt like I was landing out. I still had to make some decisions. How do I make sure I'm not getting close to this tree? I'm not sure why that tree's even there. Maybe I was a little lower than I should have been, but well, now that I did, I'm comfortable landing at Greenville. And there's plenty of options, but now one of the things, the landing at other airports that Kirk talked about at advisory, that hopefully you emailed everybody, you're not always just landing at Highland, and then if you go to a field you weren't really planning on, you hadn't planned, and you're on their frequency, what could you expect? Like they do a lot of parachute jumping up at Greenville. I wasn't planning on landing there, but I did know that they had some parachute landing planning. I've got ForeFlight, and it basically said what the time was, so I kind of was expecting it. But then when Max was coming in, I made sure to be on the radio and kind of, hey, they've got parachute jumping going on, let's try to deconflict from that. So that flight, Max came and saved me. But throughout the summer, you don't want to get very far from the airports, and you also want to be comfortable when you hit that 1,000 feet, stop soaring, and then just go work your way to the airport that you think you're going to be landing on. And trust me, I never want to say I can't make it, and you just got to bite your pride and just go ahead and do that and land. So those were two of the big things. And I did a right-hand pattern over at Silver Creek, flying over that little airport there, another farmer that has a runway over there, and I was supposed to be doing left-hand pattern. So, You know, again, I probably should have looked a little bit at the local airfields a little bit better. I was on frequency and it's probably safe, but you can do a little bit more homework than I think I did, especially since I landed there. Could have been a little bit better. All right, the badge program. I think on the, there we go. I'll start here. So on the SSA website, I'm kind of pointing you guys to where this stuff is. I had known a little bit about it, but I didn't read everything last summer. So I basically learned that getting down to the bronze badge, I probably could have done that bronze badge, should have done that before I started doing the cross-country soaring last summer. I've flown for most of my career, kind of feel, you know, hey, I'm really knowledgeable about all this stuff, but there's a ton of stuff in there that I didn't know and hadn't studied. So I recommend everybody do that and make sure you're familiar with what SSA is recommending, and then talking to everybody else and you're learning. So ABC is really, that's following as you're learning to fly. So you get pre-solo, and then you're soaring and you're getting some stuff. So follow through that, and then bronze is like the next step. Now you're going to start worrying more a little bit about cross-country, trying to learn cross-country, and the website has some ways to help you learn that, and I'll show you that here in just a second. So here's, again, it's off the website. It kind of shows you what you need. So if you want to learn and read that, the diamond badges and let me back up. These badges are the basically SSA and I think local A, B, and C are really more off of your CFIG. Then when you go to the next level, there's a whole other categories. Basically, I would call it the professional pilots. When you get into the next level, and those are FAI type issued, and they're a little bit. That's when you get the silver and gold. A lot of these terms, if you're new to soaring, we got thrown out there, and you may not quite understand exactly what all those are, but just different levels. They're different milestones. You try to keep yourself motivated. I learned to solo. Okay, that's great. Now what's next? I'm gonna get my private, and what's next? I'm gonna try to get the badges, and then you work your way up. And just like doing the cross country, there are ways to try to get clubs to have motivated members and try to find ways to push yourself and to learn and you go to the next level. Okay, if you go to the SSA website, you can get under the badges and records, badges award applications. I'll talk about first. So when you do get cross country, the data file that they were talking about is being recorded. That's one way to do it. The old school, you could do observers, and you can do pictures, or you can do barographs, but most of that is like antique. The data recorders that we have now are all digital. You get that file, you submit the file, and then I'll show you a screenshot. You can even analyze your own flight, which Rick does a lot, and it's kind of fun to watch his flights. You can see his techniques by watching and analyzing his. It's on online competition, OLC, and you can get on there, you get a membership, and you can look at how other people are doing it. So before you even do one, you can watch and see that I turn a ton when I'm doing, and when Rick's doing it, he's trying to get like less than 15% or 20% of his flight when he's in a turn. So obviously the higher level gliders have slightly different techniques, but you really want to analyze your flights, and then you can start taking some of those theories that everybody's talking about into account, and we can certainly talk about that at different times in different meetings. But when you do the application, it's online, and you have that digital file, so you basically file it, select all the different categories that you're applying for. You fill out the information which you can get off of that data file, like your start point. Fill out to the best of your ability, and then you'll sign it. But basically, the container that's there, you just use your mouse and you sign it. So it's all electrical, but then you're going to send it to your observer. Like in my case, I sent it to Kurt. He signed it as the observer, and then we submitted it with the OLC file. So all that, again, is process, and it's stuff that you can learn and have people help you out. But that is how you're going to go ahead and do your application. There is a formality to it. You need to have somebody involved and to make it official, and then you'll get credit for what you did. The bronze badge, this was what I learned just last year, and I haven't followed through on reading through everything that's on there, but when you, let me talk about these, will tell you the qualifications. I stepped too far forward. For each of the badges, each one of these PDFs will tell you what it takes, and just as a sample, real quick, I did some screenshots. I didn't do the A badge, but there's a ton of lists, but basically it's all the stuff your instructor's going to have you doing while you're getting ready to solo. The B badge you're going to be working up, and you can see it goes down through what you're learning when you're first learning to fly, and your instructor's going to be covering almost all of that. That's why the CFIG can apply for that. Then the bronze is the next level. Okay, you're comfortable flying, you've got some local experience, and then you're going to go into the bronze badge. Here's the requirements on there, but the part that I wanted to point out that was new to me, this is my lesson learned, is online you have all this information, and then you can study. There's practice quizzes and data where you can practice, and then you'll go ahead and work with your instructor, whoever the instructor is. Here's the instructor actions to go ahead and get your bronze badge. So that was some new stuff for me. So a lot of that stuff you can figure out when you get this PowerPoint, or you just go to the website and learn that. You can study when you get to the bronze badge level and learn all that data, and then you can take that test and it'll help you pass that. Okay, like I said, pretty quick. There's obviously the same type of information for the higher level badges are all in here. Any questions on that?
This is great stuff. This is, again, takes it to this level. We have mentors. Just reading Rick's emails, not only in the on-season, but during the off-season, has been incredible. My learning curve is going straight up. My skills, stick and dart skills are fine, I think, not too bad, but I think the cross-country skills, I'm zero, you know, compared to what they're describing, what Steve has done, and what the badges that are already been done demonstrated. It's great. And
I just want to piggyback on that, and it's from experience with retreats, and Gene and I have a few, and I won't get into a whole lot of detail, but going back to Max's presentation, if you're going to do cross-country, if you're a private owner, you need to make sure all your stuff is ready to go if it needs to. And if you're flying in a club ship, make sure the trailer is there, make sure somebody's there that can hitch up to that trailer, make sure everything's ready so that if you do have to be retrieved, it can be done.
that's an excellent point. And that's part of the brief as the group gets together. And I've seen this group get together and they burn that in. They say, okay, what is our plan? And it's really pointing at a person that if you're showing up, you have to have the complete plan, your land out plan, your crew, your recovery, etc. Okay, thank you so much. All right, we continue to shake off the rust. Okay, and this is the fun part. This is what Pat has done over the past few years. Is going to continue this tradition. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. You have one more thing?
It wasn't about that.
Okay, go ahead. Let's stop now.
I don't know if you all are aware that the SSA received 2 very generous donations this winter. And the total of the 2 donations is $2.5 million. And at the senior, they announced that they want membership input into how to spend that money. Obviously, some of it they probably are going to want to put in the foundation to save. But what Rick said earlier, they're trying to work on retaining members, getting new younger members, but retaining those members, because retention is typically 1 or 2 years. And the membership of SSA is declining by 200 members a year. And so they are entertaining until the end of this month requests by any member of the SSA, and there's a formal way to do it, and I have that information, of how you think that you can help the SSA spend that money. And people have suggested buying a DG-1000 for every club. That was another thing.
How about an Audi?
But the thing is that, there's a formal way to address it.
Farms,
If you have an idea that you think would help the SSA improve retention and attract young people, there's 2 weeks left to submit this to the SSA on how to spend this money.
Very good. Thank you, Ann. and again, this is our, we're thinking the season now. We're thinking if we show up at the field tomorrow, okay, that this doesn't substitute for the review that you're going to do and other documents but this may whet your appetite a little bit, or again, remind you of some things that you need to review a little bit more. But Pat always does this in a fun way. Over to you, Pat.